Hello and welcome to another episode of Experts Live India podcast. I'm Samir and today I'm joined by Saurabh and also Akshay. Hi Saurabh, hi Akshay. How are you guys
Hey,
doing?
hi.
Hi.
Good. How are you?
Yeah,
All is
doing
well
good.
here, just on a podcast recording spree since yesterday, having fun. So Akshay, today Akshay is here to talk about. So Akshay has been a game developer. You don't see you don't see a lot of them around. So today, of course, we are going to talk about games and in specific how the game it is designed, how the game is developed, and how the game is released, how is it maintained, from the concept end, to all the way to the time, the time that it is in the player's hands. So all of us here, Saurabh, Samir, Saurabh, myself, and Akshay, we are gamers. Um, so just out of curiosity, what are you guys? What do you prefer? What kind of games are you into? Are you like more of an RPG person or an FPS person?
My go-to is normally FPS, but I also like mobile games. Like Mobile Legends or Dota stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
Yes, same here. FPS mostly was like story based, nothing more than that.
Story-based games. Yeah.
Yeah, rarely MMORPG kind of stuff, but mostly it's FPS.
Yeah, pretty much the same. I'm also an FPS person. I like battle royale games nowadays too, but only some of them, not others. So, not Fortnite. Not a fan of Fortnite, but I do like, Apex Legends in particular. Really
Apex is
enjoy that
nice.
one. Yeah. Yeah, cool. So let's get started. So we're just going to talk about how the character development works, how the design works, and everything. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. Cool. Akshay, so let's start. So
Yeah,
okay. Let me ask you this: Are you a game developer, or have you been a game developer before? Do you still develop
yeah,
games?
yeah. So right now, I'm not currently developing games, but I did work as like a game developer. I think maybe back in 2018, like for a year and a half or so. And we were primarily making like educational games, stuff for like stuff to just for kids mainly, like so that for them to learn math and stuff like science and like quiz-based games and like some side scrollers.
Nice.
So, what kind of genre you were in? Was it FPS or board games or mobile
So
specific?
so all these games are actually played like on a desktop, and like they were built for like the computer. So like it was the games are like mainly like I made one which was a quiz-based one, and there were a couple of games which I worked on briefly, which were like if you know Doodle Jump or like stuff like that, right? Like but
Uh-huh.
with a math angle to it. And there was another one where I'm trying to think of what you would try to call those type of games, but like basically like you have a map and like you're supposed to move around and like try to solve equations based off of some kind of question.
So,
Like, find the answer.
did you get used to like playing that game, or like you found it very tedious to do it after coding all those stuff all together?
No, in general, I think like when you're making any kind of game, like you're so used to replaying certain aspects of it, just try to like removing bugs and stuff like that, that it does sort of get a little annoying playing it again and again. But yeah, no,
But
it,
that should make you the best player of that game in the world, though, right?
yeah. I mean, technically, if for those particular games you do know like any kind of bugs or loopholes that exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, awesome. So, guys, when you play a game, and when I say games, I mean the desktop games, right? We're not gonna Mobile gamers, in my honest opinion, are not gamers. So when I say games, I mean desktop. Well, a little bit of controller maybe can accept that, but mobile not a chance. So when I say games, desktop games, when you play a game, have you ever thought about how the game is made? How what could be the reason or what could be the logic that might have gone into making this character move like this or work like this or interact with stuff like this. And so we've seen games where a character will immediately die when it comes to contact with say like fire or water. There are also some games that they will just take some of your health out. You will be on fire for a little while, but then the fire will go out and your health will recover again. So how do you think how does that coding goes behind it, or just take it back a step a little? How do you define those textures? So how do you define what ground is? How do you define what fire is?
So that's actually quite interesting. So I think initially when I also was, when I was younger, I used to just play games, and like you had all of these weird effects that you would experience, like when your character is running around, or maybe when they, as you said, when they touch water or like fire, and they experience something differently. But like for games and stuff, like when you're trying to define like a character, like your person, right? Like you have to assume that there is a box or some kind of model or some kind of object which they have decided to occupy, and then you have to start defining other types of objects in the same space, and what their role is. Like again, like imagine boxes, like you're just putting boxes, like something like Minecraft or something like that. It's just a bunch of boxes that you're putting together. And like if you were to say, like when you gave the example of if say uh, the character, which is you, like gets in touch with like water, right, and they die instantaneously. Like so, if those two boxes, like we've defined water to exist on a certain plane, and like the character is going around here, like the second that these boxes collide, uh, we trigger a response, which is to say that the character is going to die.
Right.
But yeah, but in terms of like a game flow, it's actually like there's a lot that's actually constantly happening under the hood, and we don't really, I mean, we don't see it happen because it's done very nicely. But like, if you were to imagine it like from a computer point of view, right? Like, there's one massive loop that is going on, and it's constantly trying to repaint the screen. So whatever you see in front of you, like there is some kind of update that's going to go on over there.
Right.
And uh, one aspect of how we want to know what the next frame or like the next painting of the particular scene or like whatever you're trying to see at the moment, right, is by defining these boxes for character.
Yeah.
And a little bit of physics is being applied and stuff like that. I mean, I can get into it, like, of course, but like, I
Yeah,
just
absolutely. I think so. When you say a little bit of physics, I think there's a lot of physics that is going on.
yeah.
Actually, when we play something again, so Saurabh and I. So let's take an example of a football game, FIFA, for example, right? So when you hit the ball, when you kick it, when you shoot it, or when you block it, or whatever, then the physics of the player, first of all, yeah, granted there are like infinite bugs in FIFA games, but still, for the most part, it runs pretty naturally. So when you hit the ball, when you shoot the ball, it feels like okay, that is how a ball should move. When you hit it like this, okay, so that is how it should curve or whatever, right? So that is there's a lot of physics that goes behind making anything move or anything work or anything interact.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, generally, like even in a game, like the whole idea of building a game is like you're trying to build like this universe that people can play with or interact with, ba- in like a device, maybe a computer, your phone, or whatever it is, and like you've got to reapply the same laws of physics that we all experience.
Yes.
uh, so there is definitely a lot of physics that goes into it, like, depending on uh, what what the style of the game. FIFA, for
So
example, like with the balls and stuff and movement in general, like it's a lot of F is equal to MA going on.
That's interesting. So, do you keep any template that you could use on any project, or do you build up from the groundwork every time?
So, I mean, me personally, for the stuff that I was doing, since they were relatively small games, we didn't have like a game engine or something that we really had to use. Like there was Cocos, which is a game engine, Cocos 2DX,
Mhm.
which generally builds like the base framework for all of this kind of stuff. So, like if I'm saying I'm defining boxes, that would basically be like a box collider or like some kind of collider where we are just saying that there is this object that we have defined that has some particular properties. Uh, and if we choose to, like if it interacts with another box, what do we want to happen to either of the boxes based on this interaction? Like if they happen to come in contact, like the player in water, or maybe like player and an enemy, or player and a projectile. Uh, generally the player is the one taking damage, and like the projectile is all fine. Like the water is all cool. So
Yeah.
we don't have a reaction to the water. But like for the player, we're going to say, "Oops, you're going to lose health. You're going to die," something like that.
Yes, I was gonna say. So whenever a game starts, there's a bunch of logos that come before you actually launch the game. One of them is the game engine that is used to create that game. So game engines, in my understanding, and you guys can keep me honest here. So the game engines are basically a bunch of libraries, a preset, pre-built templates, so to say. So every time you have, say, like a need of showing water or fire or air or whatever, you don't just go ahead and create water every time. So you don't write the code for water every single time you want to show it in a game. So you just go and add those libraries, and it will just. I think I don't know if actually personally I haven't been involved in any actual game development, but is it more like have do either of you guys, do you know, is it more like a drag and drop procedure, or is it like do you start with like a code level, like a Visual Studio code or whatever, and then write your game from there?
Hmm.
So I have dabbled couple of like months in a Unity, to be frank. Unity is game engine that mostly for 3D and all those stuff. It's particularly has a preset of use resources that can use like for water, for like like you say ice and all those stuff. But the intensity of that water, intensity of everything is change. You can change it basically. You can change how the water reacts. How can you do it? But there is also called as preset to where you can change all the graphical interface of all the stuff. But the behind the scene is the same object. But as far as the person who says it, it could be look of a water, or it could be fire, or it could be anything.
Right. And I
Right.
assume you can also define how the way that it works or the way that it behaves. If you jump into water, then are you gonna swim? Are you gonna drown?
Hmm.
Um, or what's gonna happen?
Yeah, generally
Yeah,
there is. Huh. So sorry.
and continue. Sorry.
No, generally there is a lot of customization that you get with like any of the preset or prefabs, like as you might call it sometimes, uh, for any of the components that you want to add into like whatever world you're trying to build. You know, so over there, uh, as Saurabh was saying, like you can change the behavior of water entirely. Like of course, the preset will probably be trying to mimic reality as much as it can, but you
Yeah.
can change how like the waves would go, or like what style you want the water to look, or just how much of it you actually want to uh, have in a space, like occupy a certain amount of space. Yeah. So
Right. Have you guys looked into or done yourself any animation?
yeah. So there were some animations that we work on, like when we're making the games, like at my previous company as well. And like 3D animations are slightly different, but like animations in that like are generally just a lot of like say sprite sheets being put together. So sorry, sprite sheet is basically, if you imagine, it's like a sheet of paper which has like a certain character in different positions or anything, not just a character. It could just be fire also. It could be water or a wave
Right.
or something like that, like in Super Mario or something like that, I don't know if you're imagining it. And an animation over there in 2D games at least is like, you have a character, just the image that you're trying to represent the character through changes from them being in one position, like say in the process of walking, like to like as their feet are going. Like so you can have like three images. So one would be like this, one would be like this, and one would be like that. And that you just play that, you just keep switching between those three images, and that's like an animation in a 2D game.
Right.
Which
So it must be like a lot of manual work to be done, or is it a just routine that you could put into a method and it is done for you?
Oh no, like generally, like so for this, right? Like imagine, so a sprite sheet will basically be like a massive page where you'll have a bunch of like images that some graphic designer or like or anyone, any kind of artist, right? A graphic artist would have put together. Like you might have like 10,000 like little images, and you can say, okay, cool, I want to use these 5 images between this particular space from here to here, and each image is taking up this much space, right? So we're going to show this first, and then we're going to show this, we're going to show this, we're going to show this, we're going to show this for like maybe 0.2 seconds, point 0.2, point 0.2, point 0.2, and then we're going to loop through the whole thing again. So the entire animation sequence would be like maybe 0.8 seconds in total, and repeat anytime you're moving.
Right.
Okay,
So
that's interesting.
it is interesting indeed, but that makes me wonder again. So this the whole topic or the whole debate of FPS, the frames per second, the refresh rate of your animation or the refresh rate of your game. So in some resources or some online websites, I've seen the claims that anything above 60 or 90 frames per second does not actually matter because your human eye is not it's not capable to process anything above that. But then again, there's a lot of people that say that no, more better, more the frames, better the quality or smoother the game is. So what do you
Yeah.
guys think about that?
To me personally, I don't think FPS beyond certain point matters. At that point, game mechanics more important than the how it runs to effect. If your game mechanics is like not that impressive, and even you're giving like 120 FPS, it's not going to work well. However, there are is I understand it's going to be hard bargain, particularly when there are large audience for everything. Like if you
Okay.
have like thousands and thousands and thousands of system to run your game on, it's going to crack on some point of the time. It will fail on some, it will run fine on others. So
Yeah.
it's kind of fine balance that I suppose game developers, team lead, and all those have to do. But that's my say. If it doesn't matter after some certain point, to be frank.
Huh. I mean, generally, I think it again here depends on the type of game that you're playing. So essentially, like a frame, like when they're talking about a frame, is like basically what is being painted on the screen at that particular moment, right? So if they choose to, like the physics, right? All the physics that's going on in the background. Maybe the object is here, maybe it's falling, maybe a bird is like moving somewhere else, or like maybe there's some light that's reflecting off or something, right? So when they like say, so if say you're saying 30 frames per second, right? We choose to just show them 30 snapshots per second of whatever the physics is done to all of the objects in the background of the game. So now if you increase that to say 60 frames a second, I'm going to show them 60 snapshots of the same second. Now, uh, me personally, I mean, I'm used to playing on like stuff like the PlayStation and stuff, and that's limited to, I think, 60 frames per second if I'm not
60, yeah,
60, I
something
think.
60,
Like,
90, something.
yeah, like the PlayStation, at least the one I have, the PlayStation 4, like I think doesn't cross 30 for some games and like 60 for some. And that's more of like a limitation that they've set because of like hardware constraints and stuff. But like on a desktop PC, like there are people who play on like 200 frames per second. So you can imagine like if you're trying to repaint a picture, like as an object is moving through its particular path or its motion or whatever it's trying to achieve, like in the game, uh, you will see it move in a smoother manner.
Fluid,
Then it
more
would,
fluid,
yeah,
yeah.
more fluid. Like it would just seem like it's moving as is instead of like randomly stuttering and reappearing. Which is why I definitely think FPS does play a big role in like giving gamers like a smoother experience, just because of that aspect.
Yeah, regarding that one, I have been known many people facing, including me, having drops of FPS during the gameplay. So, what do you think? What is the main cause of that one? Is it a logic behind the app, or is it
It's
a
maybe
graphic
too
issue
many
or
things to
something
process.
else?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be like a combination of those things. Like say if you're like if you're playing a game on your PC, right, and you have like another software or something that's running around in the background, and because that is taking up so much of your computational power from your computer, right? The game is limited in what it can actually calculate for the next screen. So it's going to drop the FPS saying, hey, we can't play the game at 150 FPS anymore. It has to play at like 30. It has to play at like 20, just because it does not have like the capacity to actually do the calculations that need to be done. So uh, a lot of it is a mix of, and of course sometimes it could just be like bad game logic where you enter like some particular map and for some reason like everything freezes because that's like a bug in the game because like they didn't calculate how it's supposed to react.
Yes, that brings me to my next question. That is the bug bounty or bug finding and resolving. It is rather interesting, right? So sometimes I wonder how do you even find bugs? What goes into the thinking as to I mean, if 1,000 people are playing the same game, they're probably gonna play it in 1,000 different ways. So there's no way that one game developer or a team of 50 game developers is going to predict all the outcomes or all the ways that people are going to play that particular game.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just a matter of. So I've seen some really weird bugs in very popular games. So I've seen many bugs in Apex. I've seen many bugs in Counter Strike, in
Okay.
FIFA. Like I said, you can literally just go on YouTube and type FIFA bugs, and you'll have some hilarious FIFA bugs, bug videos there. So that's the thing. And how do you even find those bugs? So I think some of the games or some of the companies, they do run a bug bounty program as to where you, if you find a bug and you report
Yeah.
it, then the company will give you some incentive.
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine like games, especially where there is, some kind of financial loss to the company. Like those are the kind of bugs that they would definitely want to catch right away. There are
Yeah.
also like harmless bugs where like, maybe uh, I think since we were talking about Fortnite, right? Like used to be this bug where if you had a wall placed and like if you chose to edit the wall and then you quickly ran into it, you could phase through the wall. So that's like a relatively harmless bug. So that's not something that they would spend too much time or trying to
Is it though? I
like.
mean, but in a competitive setting, I think that would make or break the game.
That's true, actually. Yeah, definitely in a competitive setting. But I don't know if that's still a bug though. Like this was there when I used to play the game.
Yeah, it's probably gone now because do people still play Fortnite even? I don't know. Do they?
I, I mean, I know my nieces love to play Fortnite. Please love the idea of Fortnite. Uh, so definitely popular amongst the kids now.
Right. So one of the other questions I was thinking is how in terms of how things or objects in the game interact with each other. So let's say I'm the main character of the game and I have enemies. There is AI in the enemies. Well, hopefully there is some AI because there are some games where the enemies are really dumb. Um, but there are also some games where the enemies are really clever.
Yeah.
So that makes me also wonder, so does that also come as part of the game engine, or is the game engine only for graphics?
Oh no, no. Game engine is not for graphics at all. you have to build your own graphics. As far as I know, you have to develop your own graphics. There are some prefab that you could use, but they are like limited, like common scenarios. They are particularly not high quality, as far as I could find. But uh, you could, I suppose, they are basically prefab, right, with AI attached to it. If I'm not wrong. If enemy is the basically free map which have a certain action that to be performed, and there is a script that runs on the behind. Akshay could tell it better than me, to be frank.
Huh. Yes, generally, I guess it depends on the game also. Like, what type of AI that you hope that the enemies have, or like what you want. Like even NPCs, not just like enemies. You might have like random
Yeah.
characters who have no value uh, to the player's experience, but just there for like maybe aesthetics or something like that. But uh, I think like in 3D games, it's a little more complicated because there has to be like say if in I don't know if you have played Minecraft
Oh yeah.
or Minecraft, right? So like
Yeah.
basically in Minecraft you have these creepers,
Hmm.
and they constantly come close to your character, and eventually after a certain point in time, if they're too close to you, like it triggers like that whole they're gonna blow up sequence, right? And then they blow
Yes.
up.
Yeah.
So, like over there, like all the monsters are basically programmed to try to find like wherever they'll take up some space like in 3D space, right? And you are the main player, or maybe you're playing with someone else, so they are also like one of the main players. So these particular creatures will then decide, we depending on how you want to program the AI. Say like you want the monster to go to the closest player, so then it's going to figure out that this player and this player are closer than this player and this player. So let's make this monster just try and find any block that moves him towards this particular player, and that'll be like really simple AI, like very simple. Like just saying that you have one player there, you want one person here, you just make tuck 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 tuck, and then you reach this player. And if they're like within 2 blocks, we're going to start trying to blow up. It's like the monster's end goal. So in terms of AI, like that's all like they are trying to do is just trying to get to you.
Yeah. So whenever I think of what kind of logic must have gone into making a scene happen on the game, or an action happen, depending on the response, I just think that what the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, so basically game programming or the game code is basically a infinite number of if statements and statements. That's what I feel. Okay,
Yeah.
if a character goes to the left, something happens. If this and this is true, then this happens. So that is what comes to my mind.
Yeah, pretty much. I think like that's a lot of what's going on in a lot of the complicated games.
It's just a bunch of if statements.
I suppose so.
Yeah, I think I might have a nicer way of writing it, but like, yeah, basically, just a bunch of ifs is a good way to put it together.
Yeah.
Um, Here is one quick question for you, Akshay. So, for me as a software developer, uh, for long now, it's more about choosing between features versus the timelines, particularly the timelines that come from the management team. So it's always been hard to maintain those, particularly when your release comes near every day. Uh, so how do you manage all those stuff, or how hard it is from a normal software development point of view to a game development point of view?
Ha. So, at least on the stuff that I was working on back then, like we generally, okay, like if I had to use one example of one thing that I'd done was this one quiz-based game.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to say that, ideally you want a certain feature in like where you want like a certain like some movement on the screen, like just to make the options more appealing to any of the users who are trying to like click on either of them. Uh, that is more of like an added thing, like an added feature. Like it doesn't take away from the value. Like you're still going, there's still two options here that have to be picked, but like it's something that takes a little bit of time to like try and incorporate. So that's how you say, okay, fine, that's something we push as an enhancement, maybe like, for the next version of this game, something like that. If there is a quick timeline, like when you're trying to push something out. But otherwise, the basic um, design behind the game, it that definitely has to be met. Like if it's a quiz-based game, there's some text and you want some particular, like say you want the user to pick like the right answer, and based off of that answer you want to add on to like that previous question or like that previous amount of text or like something like that all of that stuff has to be met for sure. So like I feel like it was more of yeah, you can't really compromise like on too much there. Like like a lot of the game design generally, most of the game is ready when it comes out. Like you can't version it out too much
Yeah,
from experience.
that is true. Awesome. Guys, I think we've already 30 minutes past. I mean, we are 30 minutes into this discussion at this point. I feel like if we keep talking, we will keep talking, because this is a topic that all of us kind of really enjoy. Games is what something we really enjoy. So, but for now, let's give it a halt. And I say halt because maybe next time we'll talk a little more about the coding that goes behind the game. Maybe we'll have someone who has developed a really sophisticated game, maybe a 3D
Triple A
game.
kind of.
Yeah,
Triple A
that'd be
title.
quite cool.
triple, yeah, basically. So, and we'll basically bombard him with all the questions that we have. So, how is it really a bunch of if statements, or is there also there's also some other bit going on? Right.
I really hope it's not a bunch of mistakes.
That would be fun, because if that's how it works, I'm sure I can make a game myself. I can definitely write some if statements. Cool, awesome. Thanks, Akshay, again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully, I'll be able to convince you to come a little more on the show and talk a little more about some other things, not only gaming. So you are a software developer now, right?
Yes, I'm right now working for a startup in Hyderabad.
Nice. Maybe next time we'll talk about how a startup culture is. How is it like to write a software for a startup from the ground up? I assume you've started the software yourself, or are you just taking over from someone?
No. I was there with them. I mean, with this particular company since the pre-beta stage. So like
Okay,
we've
perfect, nice.
seen like three versions of the product, as well as the first one.
Nice, cool, awesome. Well, let's part ways for now. We'll come again. Thanks everyone again for joining, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you all again in the next one.
Yep. Bye.
Bye bye.